They tell me about 1 o'clock we ought to have the lunch snack ought to show up. So hopefully we can get through this next item, couple items. Hopefully it's more than a snack for $10. Yeah. Let's see. All right, now we're going to have item number 26. First, I'd like to call this meeting back to order. Item number 26, black bear potential season proposal to include hunt units, season dates, quotas, method take, etc. And let's go through this informational item, and then we'll just have any questions on the information. And we're done with that. We'll move on to the next item, and we'll have all our comment. All right? What do we got for proposal? It's a pretty nice proposal. We've got quite a bit of support material.
Larry Gilbertson, Department of Wildlife, for the record. Mr. Chairman, at the direction of the Commission, we came forth with recommendations for a potential bear season with biological guidelines that we evaluated to assess and make decisions on a type of a season that would fit biologically with the bear population that we have. And at the end of the handout that we provided, we also, with the help of Maureen, came up with a list, and Rob came up with a list of all the new added language and places we'd have to make changes to implement a bear hunt. And they're all doable.
And they're all doable.
Because they're NACs.
And Mr. Lack, you gave us a presentation at our meeting up in Fallon on this subject. Seemed fairly comprehensive, and I see a lot of that appears to be basically repeated here in this. The biological data, annual sustained yield estimate is above 40 bears plus or minus 8. Well, that's good information. Anything you want to, any changes or highlights didn't show up at that last presentation we'll go over with?
No, not on my end.
Okay, let's go with questions. Mr. Vogler?
Mr. Gilbertson, Mr. Lackey, you do know about, if we do make this come to fruition, the black powder guys are going to be asking questions, the bow and arrow guys are going to be asking questions, maybe the switchblade knife guys are going to be asking, pistol. I mean, are we going to provide hunting opportunities for bow and arrow? Might be a great way into more urban areas rather than rifles. You know, get you a camouflage garbage can, show up behind Harris. I don't know.
Well, actually, in the proposal, Carl did address that, and he's talked with some other states who have had summer seasons using archery equipment. And the actual, this is just an outline and a potential that we felt comfortable with proposing this bear season that's in here, and it addresses those types of issues, and it identifies starting in June 1st and going to September 4th with archery only, and then September 15th to December 15th, any legal weapon, use of dogs in any legal weapon, not in the archery. And these were proposals that Carl really came up with based on the removal that he's had to do during the summer, and thinking that we could direct some of that use, some of that archery use into that area, and perhaps address some of that. We also have a limit, the conservative limit in here that's going to really dictate when the seasons would close would be the female limit, and we identified that as half of the amount of female bears that could safely be removed, and it's identified as 6, and we would probably down the road, when this gets worked out through all the groups like you're saying, we'd probably have 3 bears, 3 females in the archery part of it, and then we'd inform people that that's closed, so that we'd still have 3 bears for any legal part at least, so we wouldn't close people with tags who are going to hunt any legal weapons. So, but anyway, you're right, there'd be a lot of discussion back and forth with the groups, and this is certainly open for that type of input and development.
Thank you.
All right, if I could just Since we're on this informational portion, if you could kind of go over a couple things for me. How these management objectives came about. Give me just the brief history. I mean, we've got ABC. We could just throw that out, how they came about, how we came up with those.
Carl Lackey for the record. The management objectives listed here are in our black bear management plan. And they are derived from a lot of our data from over the years, as well as looking at some other states and their management plans. 30 to 40% females in the harvest is considered a pretty safe amount for sustainable population. That's where that number comes from. A lot of our numbers are, as I mentioned before in Fallon, are just very conservative for a number of different reasons.
Okay, and the conservative, I mean, kind of came out a little question last time. They are conservative because of the heterogeneity of the sampling and capture probabilities, which means?
Well, that's our population estimate is conservative. 200 to 300 animals. When we talk about 200 to 300 animals in the state, it's conservative. Part because of our, I call it capture bias or the heterogeneity. Basically what that says is that we were doing a lot of trapping in response to conflict situations. So a lot of our trapping effort was in the urban areas. We did trap in the outlying areas, we did some trapping in the wildland areas, but not near to the extent that we were in the urban areas. So basically what that's saying is not every bear in the population had an equal chance of being captured. The other reason that that's a conservative estimate is because we are concentrating our work in the Carson Range and the Pine Nuts, Carson Valley, the Tahoe Basin, in that area. We have a lot of bears down in viable populations in the Wassocks and the Sweetwaters, but our capture effort down there was minimal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Carl, I see on here there's no consideration at all for the possibility of a spring bear hunt, and I guess my question is, it would seem to me like that the way to protect the sows with the cubs would be to have a spring bear hunt, because they're with them all the time in the spring when they first come out of hibernation. That's what my understanding. It seems to me like a spring bear hunt would save the possibility of some of them sows getting taken.
True, that is true if you do it early enough and short enough. There's, and this isn't for me to decide, but there are some sociological issues with a spring bear hunt. People don't like them for the reason that you mentioned. But if they're done early enough, our males start emerging in 1st of March, sometimes earlier than that. The females with newborn cubs will start their emergence about mid-April, mid to late April. So a spring hunt that's early on in the year and closes very early could work out, sure. I think a lot of people don't, well, the sociological issues for one, but the other reason would be that the bear hides. People hunt for the meat and for the pelts, and the bear hides in the spring usually aren't as good as they are going to be later in the fall.
Really? I was thinking it was just the opposite.
No, they go into the winter with pretty good coats. They come out in the spring. They're kind of mottled looking. They're shedding that winter coat, so to speak.
But if we had a spring bear hunt, say the month of March, mostly it would be the boars taken.
It'd be boars and, well, it could be boars and females, just females without newborn cubs. I mean, it's totally feasible, sure.
Well, and I was thinking the hide would be in good shape right out of the hibernation.
Yeah.
All right.
And,
Let's see, Mr. Lent, I know you have some experience in that area.
No, I just wanted to ask a question, and I think you've answered before, but in your opinion, then, a bear hunt is biologically sound?
Absolutely, yeah, biological, all the data indicates that our population in Nevada could more than sustain a hunt.
I just want to put that on the record, and You know, when you hunt Alaska, the spring bear hunt is much better for hides, but because they haven't been rubbed and everything when they come out of hibernation, and you always want, you know, I don't, but I'd rather hunt spring bear than fall bear anytime because the capes are a lot better, longer hair and stuff like that. I have no idea what these black bear are like, but brown bear, that's the case. The spring's always better capes.
So just to follow up on previous comment that if there happened at some point to be a proposal for a spring bear hunt, your recommendation would be, you're talking from the 1st of March through early April, and that'd be boom, and that would prevent the sow with cub issue.
That would sufficiently protect sows with newborn cubs, sure.
Okay, just anything else in the informational part of this? Any other questions on the questions? We had a question from Mr. Macbeth and a question from Mr.
Mr. Lackey, one of the comments, I believe it was by the guy that runs the Nevada Houndsmen's Association, was he was worried that too many tags would be allocated for the archery season, or they'd be used up by the time you got to the rifle season, and I didn't know if he was correct on that, but we're talking about, you know, basically splitting up the tags between the archery and the rifle. I think Larry Gilbertson indicated that, for instance, the sow quota, if it reaches 3 in the first half, it'd shut off, and 3 would be in the later season. Is there going to be something similar like that with the total number of tags that we're splitting them up?
This original proposal is for a stratified season. The same tag holders would possess a tag starting in June. They would have the option to use archery-only equipment up until mid-September. If they did not harvest, then they could use any legal weapon after that. This original proposal was for a stratified season and not a split season.
Are any further questions? Okay, we had Mr. we had Mr. Capurro and then Mr. Cavan. That's right.
Well, the idea of the summer archery-only season, again, was to target conflict bears. A lot of those bears are going to be in proximity to the urban areas. And during that time of the year, sows with newborn cubs have just been emerging for the last month or two. In order to protect those, when you're hunting a female with newborn cubs, they're going to be right with her majority of the time. Archery only, you're going to be pretty safe that you're not shooting a sow with cubs. Now, granted, the best way to sex a bear is up a tree, and the best way to get them up a tree is with dogs. But archery only during the summer, again, is just protecting that pursuit in those areas and during that time of year when the cubs are going to be real susceptible.
Prevent you from saying that dogs couldn't be used in the early part of that. I'm just saying that rather than stratifying it with bow and arrow and then any legal weapon, make it any legal weapon throughout, and you can specify the periods of time, which would be the fall, for the use of dogs.
Ken Mayer for the record. We started with that, and the more we thought about hunting with a 30-06, you could shoot from 150 yards, kill a bear, has young. So with the archery equipment, you got to get in closer. You have to be able to really see that bear. The probability of seeing cubs is much higher if you're in closer with the archery equipment.
Okay. We had a question from Mr. Cavan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a pretty good discussion, and Carl went through this whole thing at the Carson Cab, which I attended, and there was just a couple of questions that I'd kind of bring from that. And one of them was the hours, half hour before sunrise to sunset, and someone brought up that, you know, if your dogs are on a bear, it's pretty hard to call them off. So maybe that would pertain to the archery season, and then we could liberalize that for the rifle season or any weapon season. But it was just a thought that came up and something we should consider.
Some houndsmen have mentioned that to me as well, because we hunt lions 24 hours.
And what's the other thing that came up, which was, I hadn't thought of, was the California has may not have the same season, but it's open in California, so that if it did happen to be running hounds and you cross the state line, you could probably be safe in having a California bear tag as well. But I wasn't sure what their hours are, Carl, and maybe you know what that is.
I would have to find out. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Okay, because we probably should look at that and maybe be consistent with what California does.
Does anybody happen to know what the dates are for the California season?
Roughly along the same line of ours. Again, I'd have to get dates for you.
Do they
Specific
do the
dates.
June through September?
No, they start hunting them right about now. Right 1st of September. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on this? And we'll end the informational portion of this, and we'll move on to the, no, should we be able to do public comment on this item at the beginning of the next item, where we're going to start discussing it? All right, so we'll move on to 27. We'll have public comment on this issue at this time. All right, we have several numbers. We'll start with Paul Dixon, followed by
for the record, Paul Dixon. I just wanted to say that for the sportsmen in Nevada who most of them live their lives here and don't travel outside of the state, the opportunity for a black bear hunt for them was one of the big reasons for them to have a new game species to try to hunt that they would never have access to otherwise, was why the Clark County Cab was very much in support of this. I think that Commissioner Cavan brought up the other point that we had is to coordinate seasons and times such that because of where black bear hunting would be, the likelihood that you might be crossing state lines in chasing a black bear is a real probability, and we should make sure that if people are doing that, they have the opportunity to have a tag in both states and therefore pursue, when they're pursuing with dogs, something to its conclusion. Thank you.
George Corner, Nevada Outfitters and Guides Association. We support this proposal. We just had a couple points we wanted to bring up. Mr. Cavan touched on one, and that's 24 hours for any legal weapon hunt when you're using dogs, because the dogs can't tell time, just like they can't tell property lines, and that might be a problem in some of your urban areas. It'd be interesting to see how it plays out. Other issue is hunting 24 hours. We have a problem with the lion hunt where you're permitted a flashlight. If you can envision a lion or a bear up a tree and we're required to have a handheld flashlight instead of a headlight with a battery pack that just about all hound hunters across the state or across the country use, except for here in Nevada. When you proceed, if you do proceed, we'd like to see the 24 hours plus being able to use a headlight with a battery pack instead of a flashlight, and we'll come back later, ask for a code change so we can also carry the headlamp and the battery pack during lion hunts. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Don Moldy, Reno, representing myself. I'm opposed to this idea. I've got a letter here giving some of the specifics, and my apologies if I am saying things that were covered at the Fallon meeting. I wasn't at that meeting, so I didn't have the opportunity to hear the bulk of the presentation. I don't have any doubt about the biological soundness of this issue, if I could put it that way. What concerns me is that where it's located, the Tahoe Basin, which, as we all know, is a very cluttered place in terms of human activity and wildlife trying to get along. I know from living in Reno for many years that the Tahoe residents have been opposed to a lethal bear control concept, and that's why the department has had what appears to me to be great success, perhaps at considerable cost, working with the Tahoe residents over the last 15 years or so to try to handle these bear problems, which I gather are mostly human-related in terms of garbage control and not necessarily related to bears. So that issue, and it seems to me a hunt could jeopardize whatever goodwill has been created up there to this point. Having the prospect of having hunters cruising around through the Tahoe Basin and environs for 6 months of the year with bows and arrows and guns and dogs running around is, to me, absolutely nutty. I can't imagine how the Tahoe residents would regard it as anything other than that. And with respect to dogs, as many times as I've heard the commission complain and sportsmen complain about people and their dogs on public lands claiming the dogs should be leashed, there's no indication here as to how these dogs are to be handled. And if your view of these dogs is that they're to run in unsupervised packs wherever they wish on public lands, running around Tahoe to try to catch a bear, then I think that's also an unacceptable idea. It seems to me that if dogs are going to be used, they have to be under physical control at all times. The concept of something other than that, to me, makes no sense. I'm also concerned that there's nothing in this proposal that addresses enforcement, and I'm sure that poaching, which everybody knows is a problem with respect to black bears, could easily emerge here, since if you have hunters and dogs running around, then poachers could easily do the same thing without going through the process, because who would know without some enforcement activity whether a person with dogs was a poacher or somebody who was legitimately there. So it seems to me that there are many, many complexities to this thing that don't serve the public well, and frankly the bears either. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. Ken Wellington for the record, representing Elko County. We supported the hunt. We did have several concerns. I think it's important that the public knows that Endow currently puts down, I believe, about 20 bears a year that we have to because of complaints, and that's what we were told by the biologist. I'm not sure if that number's correct. But to go along with Mr. Vogler, I think that the archery, and you're going to have the muzzle loaders and everybody else is going to want something. I think we can correct that with an any legal weapon hunt. I still think we can do that in a safe manner because our sportsmen go out and they take hunter safety courses and they understand, a lot of them do, of what they need to do to hunt. Some of the comments that were brought up at our meeting were concerns of not being able to use bait. Houndsmen were concerned about dogs, tracking wounded bears with the dogs and so forth. Another concern was the 24-hour being able to use the hunt for 24 hours because of hounds. And they also mentioned a pursuit tag maybe could assist the department in not taking some of the animals but pushing them away from some of the populated areas where they have problems. The houndsmen would be willing to look at something like that also. And I believe that was all that we had at our meeting. Thank you.
Karen Lane, Las Vegas Valley Humane Society. Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and Commissioners, I'd like to approach this from two standpoints, because obviously we're totally opposed to this proposal. And I guess my first question is that it looks like the fees that will be collected from this hunt are very minimal. And I've been listening for the last 2 days, and all I've heard is that Endow has no manpower available, that they don't even have manpower available to do the things that they need to do currently or that they're tasked with. And my question is, it sounds to me this is a urbanized area where this is going to occur, and I'm not clear on where these people are going to come from this enforcement effort, because I'm assuming that there is an enforcement effort. It just says that anytime you kill a bear, you've got to call in Endow. I just don't understand administratively how the fees that are going to be collected, and let's do away with or get rid of the fact that you've got to make changes to the NRS on some of these, and also the heritage tag. Let's just set aside the heritage tag for right now. Where are these enforcement people going to come from if NDOW doesn't even have the people to do that? It certainly presents, from a public perception point, a big question to us, because it says, oh, hey, you've got these people out here because you're going to set up this separate hunt, that you've got all these people available. And I don't think that's what you want to tell the public right now, because it seems to me it's the totally opposite, that you don't have personnel to do this. The other issue that concerns me is you're going to implement this, and I don't see anywhere in this discussion something about evaluating this program after a year to see what you actually accomplish and how many. You talk about conflicts right now with people, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but if you do start having, because this is an urbanized area, you have problems, I don't see anything that says that you're going to discuss this or evaluate this issue within a year to see if there are problems that are generated from this. And usually when you implement new programs, you do set up an evaluation process, and there's a cost associated with that to determine how effective this is. I realize that this board is very geared to the hunting population. I understand that. But I would also point out to you that you represent a very small portion of the general population. And there's a whole nother chunk, what about 90% of the population that's not hunter related, that looks at this in terms of, we actually like black bears, and we don't have if you look at this letter from this woman who said, gee, I'd like for you not to do that, and I'm in that population which may have conflicts with that. So I would just say that those are my issues, and I think you're creating a real problem, more of a problem than you're actually solving by doing this. Thank you.
Let me first start with representing the Carson Advisory Board, then I'll represent myself. The board voted in favor of this. Our locale is directly in probably the largest bear area of the state. Carson City County enacted a bear ordinance last year. It's been working pretty effectively. I've seen a good number of additional bear-proof trash containers go up where we've had a lot of problems, and mostly, as was mentioned, are caused by people, not the bears. But the bears become accustomed to that green wagon, food wagon, that comes out every Tuesday or Wednesday. And once they get indoctrinated with that, and the sows indoctrinate their cubs, the cubs say, that's where the lunch wagon comes from. And it becomes very difficult, and I can understand the letter from the people in some communities. Bears are beautiful. And it's an animal that we have throughout the country of one species or another. And nobody's looking to do away with all the bears in the country. We have conflict bears that have learned the wrong thing, mostly because of human error. We're trying to correct that. One of the things I believe in the stratified season with the archery availability in the early part of the season would be to pinpoint those conflict bears. They don't all hibernate. Those bears have a good food source all year round in a lot of the areas, in the Carson Range and in Tahoe. A lot of the areas up in Tahoe have enacted requirements for bear-proof trash containers. It's been effective in those communities that enacted those regulations. And when the bears can't feed in one community, they'll go pick on another community that hasn't yet enacted those regulations. And until we get everybody to do it, we're going to have some problems. Having this bear season to remove what we estimate out of the 40 tags that will be issued with a success rate estimated at 50%, would be 20-some-odd bears. It's not going to hurt the population. That population will be augmented by the population that's right over the hill, where it's estimated to be something like, 10,000 bears in the Sierras. So I don't think we're going to do away with all the black bears with issuing, 40 tags. Okay, let me switch the pitch now to Gil Yannick, private citizen. I get a little uptight when people tell me that certain things about bears, when they haven't got the first inkling of what the hell it looks like to be 2 inches from the jaws of a bear like I have. That's scary, folks. To see a 400-pound bear jump over your 5-foot metal fence into your backyard, that's scary too. And until you've been in that position, your attitude is going to be totally different than anybody else who's ever can sit back on their computer and say how great it is to have all these bears. Well, if we don't do something about it, we're going to have bear-human conflict problems. We've been very lucky in this state not to have experienced that. But all you have to do is do a little research and see what some of these people who are partial survivors of a bear-human interface problem. And then ask yourself, could we have done something to prevent that? This regulation, I feel, is going to be the first step in preventing that from happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I've been trying to do pro-con, pro-con.
No, I'm not against it. Okay. Rex Flowers, Washington County Game Board. I'm sure you all had our draft minutes. You recognize that we are in favor of this. We only ask that the stratified season be changed to an archery-only season and separately an all legal weapons season. We also ask that the hours of hunt be changed to 24/7. We ask that there be a bear hunt seminar mandatory, not voluntary. All edible parts must be removed from the field, and harvest validation be mandatory. Let's say, I don't think this hunt is going to end the bear-human conflicts that are going on, but it's going to help to reduce them to a small percentage. I also feel that a lot of people, I understand the love for animals. I think we all have that same love for animals, and we like viewing them in the wild. But, some people have some real concepts out there that we're going to have people running up and down their city streets with bows and arrows and all these god-awful thoughts going on. And they've taken things out of proportion. I mean, we don't do that. We hunt deer in that country. We're not running up and down the street with guns or sticks and strings chasing deer. This would be no different. Thank you.
Yeah, howdy. Walt Mandeville, Lyon County. Our board discussed this issue, and they're all in agreement. Our feeling is that the Department of Wildlife can establish a season that makes sense with your approval. I have handled a large number of bears myself because I was in the bear position for a number of years with the beehives getting wrecked, and I've had people throwing food to these things and intentionally setting out bait. I've had bears walk into people's kitchens to eat their apple pie, and they're a very dangerous animal. In fact, of all the animals that I've handled in my life, the black bear made me more nervous than any. And I've handled a lot of cougars, pronghorn deer, Deer will kick the heck out of you too, but those black bears, you never know what's coming next because they're unpredictable. And we are lucky that we have not encountered a very serious. I had a man that was feeding pancakes to a bear just out of Reno, and he coaxed him clear over to his picnic bench. This was a yearling, and he decided to scratch it behind the ear. He caught one right across the chops, I think 21 stitches. When he told me the story, I wanted to laugh because I thought, Jesus, that was pretty stupid, wasn't it? But I mean, I've had a lot of experiences, and I agree that this season will not solve all the problems, but I think that it will help to alleviate some of it. And there are a very large number of acres that can be hunted without interfering with the human houses and property and stuff like that. It is difficult around the Tahoe Basin. I've had bears coming into the back door of the school cafeteria for food, you know, so it's a serious problem. And I'm thrilled to death to see that there's actually an opportunity to hunt bears, because it's one animal that we have been unable to manage as a wildlife agency. And this is a step towards managing that animal. And Nevada is the only state that I'm aware of that does not have a bear season. It has a population. And we do have California supplying bears. In fact, I always thought it was kind of funny because I'd catch a bear up at Tahoe with a red streamer on his ear, and then I'd dump him back across the state line, and they'd pick him up and dump him back over this way. So they're quite well traveled sometimes. But they do travel. When you release them, you think you're going to put them way down south somewhere, but they come right back almost the next day. And so it's a difficult situation. Anyhow, that's the way we feel, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. That was all the cards we have. Anybody else? Okay, in that case, we'll close the public hearing on this matter. I'd like just to make a brief, one thing that comes out here is, thank you. No one likes to see bears more than hunters. Hunters are the primary environmentalists of our age. We are the ones that that propagate these animals out there. The only people that really step up to the plate financially to do that, as well as spending their time. So, in some of these emails, it's rather interesting. A lot of solutions I know that come out are, well, you guys should do something about the feeding, about the trash containers, fines for people that are feeding bears, all these things. Those are great. Those should all be done at the local level. Talk to your chamber, talk to your county commission, talk to your town council, talk to your mayor. It might very well be appropriate for your community, but on a statewide basis, well, first, we don't have the authority to do it. If we did, any authority we might have to do it, we shouldn't utilize, because it's going to be specific from town to town, county to county. Even if we had authority, we shouldn't utilize it due to that fact. And all laws of that nature are best implemented at the level closest to the people. That's just kind of a generic. Let's see. Our net commissioners start. We have Mr. Capurro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had some very interesting emails on this. Some of them called me names I've never heard of before. A couple of them wanted us to provide a corridor for bears to move from one protected area to another. Another one asked us why we weren't planting berry bushes and apple trees to feed them. And what it points out is there are a lot of people that just don't understand bears very well. They think they're, unfortunately, Walt Disney didn't do us any favors. He made a hero out of Lobo the wolf. He made heroes out of, various types of cats and others that are they're wild animals. They're unpredictable by nature. I had to laugh to look to watch the latest Nissan commercial where the guy's out at his car and the polar bear comes down from the Arctic Circle and that comes into his driveway and gives him a hug. Well, probably didn't show the rest of it where he bit off his head, but the fact of the matter is, that kind of commercial, I think, is dangerous to tell people that they're not really as harmful as you try to make them. They're very dangerous animals. I think that it's necessary for us to gather information. I think Carl's done a heck of a job, but I think you can gain a lot more information by having a season, providing the type of follow-up as is necessary, and I agree with the lady who said that you've got to have follow-up. We do. It may not be in this particular proposal, but obviously we're going to watch this season like a hawk to see what develops out of it and what to do in the future. I think the idea of a stratified hunt is fine, but I will tell you now that I believe to avoid the conflicts that somebody already mentioned about, well, the pistol guys and the archers and others are going to be in here, the rifle guys are going to say, how come the archery people have such an advantage, which this does provide if you use this type of stratified system set forth here. So I will only support it as long as it's any legal weapons during whatever portion of time. I don't think it's appropriate to use dogs in the, as it's set forth here, in the early part of it, so that's fine, and dogs should be allowed in the other portion. I do not believe that baiting bears should be allowed at any time. I don't have a particular problem with the 24-hour situation as set forth by Mr. Corner and some others. That it's problematic for some people, I'm sure. I think the $50 is too low a fee, and I would think that something, I think even in the Reno meeting, Rex, you had Sean Shea and others suggested $100 if, or more. And I don't think that's inappropriate. And I think you'd sell every tag that you have. That would be an amendment to what's proposed here that I would make if and when we get to the point of adopting something. Otherwise, I know that our NDOW people have done a lot of work on this. Carl's the foremost expert in bears. Everybody recognizes that. And I think this is a very conservative approach to adding a new hunt season, one that I'm sure that a lot of sportsmen are going to be interested in supporting. And I think you'll sell out whatever number of tags that are decided upon fairly quickly. That's my comments.
All right. We have Mr. Limp.
Going through this, I think it was very well put together. I have some concerns on here I'd like to just throw out, about 9 different items here. One is, I think, since this is a experimental season, I think this, whatever we do, should be reevaluated after 1 year. We're not going to set 2-year season on this. We should do it 1 year and then bring it back and reevaluate it for season length, for quotas, everything. Just, I think we ought to do that. I like the idea of all edible portions, and I didn't see it in here except for Morris County. All edible portions should be taken out. I agree with Commissioner Capurro. It should be any legal weapon. And I also agree there should be an indoctrination, because it's a new hunt for every hunter in the state. We had it for sheep and elk and everything, and after we started hunting them for many years, I think indoctrination would be appropriate for, since it is new to every hunter, and to stress, you know, they're not to shoot cubs, you know. I think we should have a good hunter return on it so we can monitor the results. I disagree with the 24 hours. I just don't think, I think the commission regs sunrise, the sunset are half hour, their hours. I think hunting them all night long, I think, is not appropriate. I would not like to see that. The validation of the hide or skull, it doesn't say in here what they're gonna validate. Do you bring the hide or do you bring the skull out? It's a good opportunity for the biologist to get any data if they want to bring out claws or blood samples or part of the intestine or whatever biological data they want. I think that should be included in here because this is a good chance to study any bear and see genetics or whatever we want to study and force the hunters to bring out any studies that they, or any specimens they don't need. I think we should have a shorter season. I just don't think hunting them 9 months of the year is on the first hunt. I'd support a spring season. I think they're better shape in the spring, and so I'd support a spring hunt. But I think hunting them, and then we can, Alaska alternate spring and fall. And we want to alternate it. We can have one in the fall, one in the spring. But I think we should err on the shorter side till we get a handle on what's going on. And if we're going to start, I'd start in the spring. And also, I agree with Commissioner Capurro. The fee on it should be $100 instead of $50. I think it's a premium hunt, and there's not going to be any problem selling this to the sportsmen from the interest that I've seen. And so I think the fee should be appropriate. And those are my remarks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'd like to throw out a couple things here that I found in here. Actually, there's probably a good answer out here. Under regulatory considerations, number 7 here, special regulations. We'd have to call the black bear hotline within so many hours prior to hunting. How many hours? It didn't say a number of hours. It said must call it prior to hunting. Shouldn't there be a... And also on that, now with the web deal, I mean, shouldn't you be able to look it up on the internet and not have to worry about calling? Has that been considered as a possibility? I don't know if that's anything on that?
Sure, all this takes money. So the thought is we want to move towards an internet, but the hotline is something we can, take care of. When it's closed, it's closed. So you only close it. So a lot of the details haven't been worked out here, obviously.
Okay, but just throwing out there, what would be, as for the money-wise, what's cheaper? Post it on the internet or call a hotline?
Well, it's an operational issue, okay? So we can do it both ways. I'm not saying we can't. We just thought having the phone line, this is an open book at this point. And I might also mention the reason we went $50, and we kick this around a lot, where most of the money is going to be made to manage this program, and I'll guarantee you we'll go in the hole on it, is where the $10 application fee. So we want to promote as many applicants as possible. $100 for 40 tags, or 45 tags, or $50 for 45 tags. That's not where the revenue base is to manage the program. That's why we did that, but that's certainly up to the commission, but that's what our thinking was at the time.
Okay, and as for at some point in time, if we're going to stick it in there with the 800 number, we'd have to come up with a number of hours before that. It says prior to hunting. I mean, I can run in that, okay, if I'm out for 6 days, do I have to call back? It'd have to be spelled out. Yeah, regardless of what it is, I'd probably be good with it. We just need to spell that out in language.
I also mentioned we did look in the internet. California season is a half an hour before sunrise and a half an hour after sunrise. Sunset. They also have an archery season, no dogs, and a general method season with dogs, and their dog closure zones included in that, and they have an in-season closure of 1,700 bears. So
I don't care if California does. That's what we're saying.
And I think, quite frankly, what they do there is that they put it on the radio. They send all tag holders a letter in the mail, and I suspect that they have something on the internet now. So we would want to do everything we could when we hit the in-season closure, or whatever that was, to let those hunters know that season's closed. So we have to work through all those issues.
One thing I'd like to throw out as well is for the initial year, some of the concerns that seem to be coming out involve the Carson Range, Tahoe Basin, the use of dogs in that area. We should throw out the possibility that in those specific units, the 192, 94, 96, consider maybe separating them and having maybe no dogs for the first year in those specific units. If we're thinking there might be some conflict, see how it goes with the non-dog for the first year, allow dogs in all the rest of the units. That's a possibility. It's thrown out. Might want to at least have that on the radar to discuss when this comes up, because I think there are some legitimate concerns, and we've heard them from various people here in the audience and the emails. Yeah, there's going to be a lot, like I said, there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on it, and at least for initial, we ought to look at no dogs in the most crowded areas, and everywhere else allow them. See, one thing that came up in here was the one item that would require a changed NRS. I think at this point in time, which was under 6 potential program funding associated costs, item D, I wouldn't be interested in coming up with something that required a changed NRS at this point. If bear hunt looks like it's going along good, a couple years, might be a consideration at this point. I don't think item D would. We don't know if we're going to have
Chairman, let me explain why we put that in there. Much like the elk depredation, we have no way to fund our urban bear program with the way the general fund is going. Carl's work, frankly, to go into incline, work with the residents, snake bears out of cabins. That's all needs to be paid for with general funds. Where our thought here was that something we'd explore is adding that depredation, if you will, fee to help fund the program. That's what we were thinking.
Okay, go ahead.
With respect to the fee, Director Mayor, what I've always found is it's easier to come down. If the second year, I guarantee you will sell every tag that you're going to get. I mean, if not, I'll buy them. But the fact of the matter is you're going to sell them at $100 or at $50. You may have fewer people that apply, but you're still going to sell them all. It's our experience that it's a heck of a lot easier to come down from 100 to 50 than it is to go back to the sportsman and say, we're going to raise your fee from 50 to 100. So we already acknowledge it's not going to pay, this fee is not going to pay for the program. And the $10, okay. But the fact of the matter is that the tag is worth more, in my view, than $50. And again, I don't want to have to come back the following year and say, well, we really ought to raise that because we had 25,000 people apply for these 20 tags and we know the market is higher. So that was my reasoning for it.
Thank you. One thing I was looking at too here was, these number of months hunted, it does seem excessive for the first year. Maybe at some point, and I agree with you, definitely needs reevaluated after the first year. But for initial year, starting that summer hunt, June 1st to September 14th, I'm thinking maybe more the September 15th through December 15th might be more appropriate. And maybe a small spring bear hunt, have a limited quota here, of course, limited quota there. Maybe a little bit of both might not be bad. Okay, let's see, we had Mr. Macbeth.
Going back to what Commissioner Capurro was indicating on the tag fee, maybe system consultants could maybe weigh on this, because it's my recollection that we had this issue on the PIW tag fees, and that that they were real high in the beginning, and then when we dropped them, there was some real concern about dropping them. But what happened was that it increased the number of applications, and I'm wondering if any research was done as to how that played out, as statistically, as to where did you see the break?
Monty Martin, Systems Consultants. I tried to listen very closely to what you were asking. A number of years ago, the fee was all of your tag fee, and then we it was dropped under Tommy Ford's suggestion, and we dropped it. It was dropped to a $10 fee across the board, and there was over time, every year I make a presentation, there was just a dramatic increase in participation and revenue generated. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Beth?
And so that, I guess the follow-up on that is from what you have seen, is there a break that you might be able to extrapolate from this information that $50 might, you know, is there a break in there? Or what would system consultants think? You guys see the numbers more than anybody else.
Mr. Chairman, may I interject here? I think there's a little bit of confusion between tag fee and application fee going on here. Yes, the tag fee that Mr. Capurro is talking about is the $50 tag fee going to $100. That has not anything to do with an application fee, because if you supply an application or if you submit an application for a tag, you're going to be charged a $10 application fee. The Partnership and Wildlife fee was a separate issue. It was to fund the Heritage Trust account. Initially, the deer tag, if you did it for Partnership and Wildlife for deer, it was your full tag fee. At that time, if you participated in half of your big game tag fees, and then participation was significantly lower when it was at those fee levels, and then when it was dropped to the flat $10 rate, Partnership and Wildlife funding for the Heritage Trust account did go up. So there is separation, you know, there's differences in the fees that we're discussing right now. So it's the tag fee that Mr. Capurro was talking about.
There's a huge difference, and I don't think that was necessarily in question. I mean, we're just trying to extrapolate from one to come up with another. It's $50, $100 is your best guess. I was wondering if he had another best guess that could be thrown into the mix. If you had anything you could weigh in on there, what would be best? Have you?
We have not looked at this, nor have we considered what the appropriate tag fee would be for bear.
For revenue generation with applications, number of applications. Something to think about.
Something to think
Thank
about.
You.
I wouldn't want to throw out a number.
Got you, Kaywood. Mr. Capurro, Mr. Lent.
Thank you. That's comparing apples and oranges, though, between the question you had and what my concern. I understood full well that the big money comes from the $10. But I don't think we should be giving the tag away as kind of an afterthought, and I think $50 is an afterthought.
I can address that also. When we discussed the fee in-house, I actually went out and looked at tag fees in other states, and the $50 was an average across most of the western states, and the $200 for the non-resident was about an average across most of the western states. I actually threw in Minnesota and Pennsylvania too. So that was a starting point so that we could get some discussion.
The problem that exists with that is every one of those states you mentioned has at least 10 times more bears than we have, if not 100 times more. So you're going to find, I will bet you, any number of non-resident tags that are allowed will be gone like that, because people want to hunt in Nevada for any kind of species that there are. It's probably not a hill to die for. I just don't think 50 is correct. The situation about the, I know full well with both Partnership and Wildlife, yes, you had a huge thing, but that's a totally different type of animal than this.
Mr. Lent?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at the fees and the salary, I guess Carl Lackey's salary now is out of general fund, if I'm not mistaken. And no?
Can you answer that?
It's in the wildlife account. He come out of his salary comes out of the license tag fees.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, well, it's coming out of license tag fees now, and we could supplement it with some of this income, because, I mean, the way you guys have it here, we got tag fee, 3,000, you got 3,000 to 20,000 on the application fee revenue, predator fee revenue, 900 to 6,000, and so excluding the heritage, which we don't have it in, there would be some of this money to supplement the wildlife account. So we'd be gaining more money to put in the wildlife account. It wouldn't pay his fees, but he's not getting any money from any hunt right now, any hunting fees. So this would also supplement whatever salary he's getting now, because this would go into the wildlife account, right?
Yeah, I mean, all those fees would go in the wildlife account.
So, when the director says, well, somebody's got to pay a salary, we're already paying a salary, but this is going to help pay a salary. We're not going to make his salary up completely, but it's going to help make a salary. So from that standpoint, you can't lose.
Mr. Chairman, we're not really interested in debating this. It's really your decision. We just threw out something there that we thought, a guy says, well, if I got drawn, it's going to cost me $100. How many people are going to be putting in for that? Versus, oh, if I get drawn, it's going to cost me $50. So it's all a guess, by golly. Yeah. And so all this money, we want to generate as much as we can. So anybody's guess is there. So we'll have a range in the proposal, and then you guys just select
and pick
range.
75 then.
Yeah.
All right. Running through my Ouija board, at $50, it said we'd have more than 2,000 applicants for certain. So, but that's what it said. What did yours say? That's where we're at. I would think that would be a low number. Okay. What's that worth? So basically we've have some consensus. I'm trying to come up here. We've had some consensus that dogs are probably a good idea. Although I'd like to throw out the opportunity, the possibility that maybe in one or two units there in the Carson Range, around the Tahoe Basin, we might want to consider at least first year, maybe not. We're talking possibility of a spring hunt, approximate dates 1st of March through 5th or 10th of April or something there on that category. And I think I've seen some on commission here, and me personally, I'm not so much into that summer hunt. Besides that, these summer hunts, warm weather hunts, I see people bringing in cow elk and stuff in August, and wow, you want to eat these things, right? It's an issue. It's a severe, you got a 300-400 pound animal down. If you want to eat it, I suggest you don't get it during August more than 10 yards from the road. It's a real issue. So for quality, some people might not like black bear simply for the reason that it was probably shot in August a mile from the road. It would basically become unedible unless you have a lot of friends or lots of horses. So I'd just throwing that out there. What do we want to do with this? I hope that wasn't a motion. We had Mr. Howell for a motion. Yes, sir.
Puppy on here. My motion's going to be to have a spring bear hunt commencing next year, 2011, for the full month of March. Any legal weapon, with the hours suggested by NDOW for sunrise to sunset, half hour before or half hour after. And the
Class required. Class required.
Yeah, the class requirement to take effect, and $100 fee, tag fee. The hunt would be a quota of 50 total, with the hunt ending with 10 females taken. And from the 1st of,
I'm gonna have to stop you there. The agenda item is to draft a regulation to have a season. You can't set quotas right now. You do that at the quota setting meeting,
So if we could avoid quotas,
okay.
that'll be later, another meeting.
You avoid the quotas. Well, this would, and I think we should have a separate bow season immediately following the any legal weapon season for 1 week commencing April 1st.
Okay, and season settings are for the season setting meeting too, so right now all we want to do is draft a regulation to have a bear hunting season.
But, Mr. Chairman?
Let's see, it states on here may discuss, create, provide instruction.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Mr. Pearl.
But in what he's saying, Brian, is that he's dealing with the issue of archery, not specifically, you know, the dates I suspect could be floated. He's trying to say that there should be a portion of it archery and the rest of it any weapon.
Yeah, and that's fine, but specifying the dates is for the season setting meeting, and that's done every year based on, you know, the data that NDOW brings to us. So what we're doing right now is setting up the regulation that will allow people to hunt bears. And then at the season setting meeting, you'll tell them what season they can hunt bear. And then at the quota meeting, you'll tell them how many bears they can hunt.
But could he not say that there will be an archery season for a short period of time, sometime in the time frame?
Okay, you know, as long as it's kind of general, that's fine. But I mean, even you don't want to lock yourselves down right now, because if the data says, you know, the bears aren't going to be even out until the end of March, then, you know, you don't want to have a season starting the 1st of March.
Okay.
So, whatever.
So we currently have motion for, and as the first portion of the motion is a spring rifle season for approximately a month in length. Any legal weapon, thank you. Any legal weapon season for approximately a month in length, followed by approximately a week archery season. Sunrise to sunset, half hour before, half hour after, as proposed by NDOW. Class being required, $100 fee.
No baiting. No baiting.
No waiting.
No baiting.
No baiting.
No baiting, yeah.
Baiting. Got it. Yeah, a required indoctrination class.
Right.
Have anything else?
Reevaluation after a year?
Reevaluation. I'm trying to get the rest of the motion. We get the rest of the motion. Is there anything else in that motion? Okay, once we got to get seconded before we can do that. We're just trying to figure out are we done with the motion?
Sure.
Okay. It's have a motion and a second. And now we have Mr. Cavan. Mr. Cavan,
thank you.
You had a question on the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to request the motion, Mr. Howell, if he would possibly consider other recommendations from the department could be included that we can rule on at a separate time, like the some of the proposals which they had, so that we don't close the door on those issues today. Maybe we can still evaluate those proposals as they come through. Just so we don't have such a specific motion that we've tied our hands here is all I'm asking for.
You know, I don't hear a word you're saying, so you might as well quit mumbling.
Okay, okay. That was a question on to accept.
I don't understand exactly what the request was, because well, we can't set seasons and dates and everything right now anyway.
I guess my question is could we not close the door on the fall season today?
Well, I wasn't allowed to to put that in it anyway.
Oh,
we didn't close the door on that, did we?
Well, if you don't include it in the motion, I think that's.
well, we could always have
my
another
question.
motion, or something could follow this as well.
Okay.
Mr. Stockton?
Okay, remember, this is we're gonna create a regulation, so it's still gonna have to go through the regulation process. You're gonna have to have it drafted, come back to the meeting, have your workshop, then what? I'm sorry. And then after your workshop, then you have to have the actual meeting where you take the vote on it. So, right? Because that's what the that's what the item says. It says guidance to staff to create a black bear regulation. So.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Lent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the motion to establish a bear season is all we need, and we'll do a regulation, and the department, we didn't cover everything in the regulation, and the department will come up with suggestions in the regulation and bring it back to us, and then at that time we can add or subtract this is just the motion was just establish the season, and I think that's all we need, and to give them some parameters of what we wanted, and there's going to be nuts and bolts that's got to be twisted, and they'll bring back to us. So I think that we can't put everything in the motion now. It wouldn't be appropriate.
Right, and the other thing to consider is you're going to have to reconsider this anyway, because since we're in the legislative season, it's only going to be a temporary regulation. Right. So it expires, I forget when, but after the legislature leaves town, you have to do it again as a permanent regulation. So.
Okay. So, very good. And if anything was missed in this motion, we can always have another motion immediately following, as long as it's not contradictory to the motion. So if we want to address dogs or whatever else can have this, then that could be a separate motion. So as the current motion reads, let me get through it here. The current motion was to ask staff to draft regulation for a bear hunt for approximately a month in length in the spring, followed by approximately 1 week bow season. For this season to have a required indoctrination class, $100 fee, no baiting, reevaluation after 1 year, time being half hour as proposed by the department. Half hour before sunrise, half hour after sunset. We there? That was the motion, that was the second. Yeah. Required indoctrination class. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none?
I just have Chairman Raine and Charlie, I just have a problem with making criminals out of everybody that's got hounds. You get after 1 in the afternoon and you tree him up and he's bayed up and it's dark and it takes you another half an hour after dark to find your hounds, and there he is. I think it's going to be real difficult not to have somebody say, well, my tongue's already dragging in the dirt, let's go ahead and whack him. And you know, if you're in hot pursuit, it's dark, I don't have any heartburn with letting it go after sunset. That's my only problem, but I will vote for the motion no matter what. We got to get started. I want to go hunting.
If this motion fails, making the second motion, there's not a problem with that. So, all for the motion, signify by stating aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, does anybody have any further motions on this topic?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I'd like to propose that we also consider having a fall hunt season to be determined in talks with the staff. Same requirements as we would set for the spring one, except dogs would be allowed.
Second. Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded that we also come up with a fall bear season, otherwise identical to the previous motion. A fall any legal weapon season, have we ever heard? And dogs allowed. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, proceed to vote. All in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Very good, motion passes. Anything else?
Yeah.
Okay, we have something else.
Mr. Chairman, I think we're kind of closing the door on one of the components here, so I'm gonna take a stab at least looking at the archery component of this that was proposed by the department, because part of this proposal is to try and discourage the urban bear problem, and without the archery component or some component during that portion of the year, we may be missing the opportunity. So I think we should have that. I'd like to make the motion that we not abandon that at this point in time, and that we ask the department to come up with a recommendation for the archery hunt, as well as the other hunts we've asked for.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded to, did we have something important on this particular motion?
Just some information only on that.
Okay.
Regarding the archery only or a summer season. This year, I had to kill 19 bears between June 1st and the end of August, conflict type bears. And that was the reason for that suggestion for the summertime season.
Very good. Thank you. So that's some interesting discussion on this. Does everybody understand the motion? Any question on the motion? Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, proceed to vote. All in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, can all in favor raise your hands for all in favor? We have Mr. Macbeth, Mr. Vogler. Okay, it's split. Mr. Cavan, Mr. Wallace. Okay, so it's 4-4 here at the moment. Did we get all that, Suzanne? Did you get the other 8? Jeez. All right, all opposed was Mr. Lent, Mr. Capurro, Mr. Shrum, and Mr. Howell, and myself. Motion fails. Another motion. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is